My name is Samir Kalra, and this is an interview of a survivor of the 1947 partition of the Indian subcontinent. The interview is being conducted at 4:06 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on August 16th, 2011 in Fremont, California. Can you please state your name and place of birth for the camera?
My present name is Narendra Kalra,
A- and your original name?
Narendra Kalra,
And what year and where were you born?
July 30th, 1936 at Lahore in an area called Meva Mandi at home.
And where is Lahore? What country is Lahore in?
Lahore is in Pakistan, but at the time of my birth, it was in India.
Okay, great. And can you tell us what your ancestral homeland is, or what your ancestral town is?
Ancestral town is in Dera Ismail Khan, which is in northwest frontier of Pakistan now.
Okay. And have you ever lived in Dera Ismail Khan?
Yes, when I was younger, I used to visit up to the age of 11, almost like once or twice a year. I used to go there with my mother, and I lived almost like 9 or 10 months during the partition, a couple of months before partition, and up to April or May of 1948.
Okay. And when you visited there, where did you live, or what other cities did you live in while you were in Pakistan?
Well, in Pakistan, at the time of my birth, my parents were living in Peshawar. So, but my mother went to Lahore at the time of my birth, and after my birth, I went back to Peshawar. So I lived there up to the age of 7. I think somewhere around 1943, we left Peshawar because my father had got a job in Delhi. So during transition, I stayed about 3 months in Lahore with my paternal grandparents, and then from there, after place was found in Delhi, we moved to Delhi and we lived there for about 4 years.
And can you describe the area you lived in when you were in Peshawar?
Peshawar, I remember we lived in 3 different areas. The last area I remember quite well, which was government quarters for government employees. My father used to work for a bank, so he was given, I think, a 2-bedroom flat type of thing. It was a single story with an open space inside, like a house is built around there. It was a comparatively very nice area. I remember we used to have a very big park where we used to go in the summer evenings when it was pretty hot. And outside this quarter area, there were nice big bungalows with big gardens and fruit trees. And on one side, where this was connected to the old type of city, there was a slaughterhouse. I remember as a child going there and kind of always wondering what was happening there.
Mm-hmm. And was your neighborhood a mixed neighborhood of Hindus and Muslims, or was it a primarily Hindu neighborhood?
As far as I remember right now, these government quarters, I came across only Hindus. I never came across any Muslims at that time. And besides that, I may not even have that much idea about religion at that time because, you know, I was only 7 or younger. But outside this area, there were a lot of big bungalows which were kind of mixed, and there were people of all different religions over there.
Did any of your family members interact or socialize with Muslims?
As far as I know at that time, no.
Okay. And can you describe a little bit about your ancestral hometown of Dera Ismail Khan, where you also lived?
Yes, Dera Ismail Khan was in northwest frontier. It was not a very big city, but it was a comparatively good-sized city. I think it may be second or third. The biggest city might be Peshawar. So it was a fairly good-sized city, and most of the people living there, Hindus and Muslims, lived in a separate areas, as far as I know. I don't know about any mixed areas. The street where we lived, it was a very, very long street, close to 100 homes. The street, one side was walled in, the other side there was a big gate, which was open in the morning and closed at night, even during all the time. And many houses on the street had doors in the back for shortcuts going into different areas. Now, in one side of the street, especially the side of the street where our house was. Behind that was a completely Muslim area. There was a road, small road there, and behind that there was a wall area again, and behind the wall there was a mosque, because every morning, early morning, we could hear the mullah's bomb of calling for prayers. So that's how I know it was a Muslim area.
And when you were in Dera Ismail Khan, did you have any interaction with Muslims outside of your neighborhood at all?
Only when we went in the market, many people selling vegetables and all these things were Muslims. And sometimes when we bought wood for firewood, these people were Muslims, and they would come and deliver it at home. But other than that, they're not that much social interaction with Muslims. Only the business related things. My grandfather, which was Nana, he was constantly in touch with Muslims because he was a doctor in a public hospital, and he was always in touch with Muslims over there because they came as patients. And he even spoke, many of the Muslims coming over there were Afghans, and he spoke Pashto very well because that was part of his dealings with Afghans.
Okay.
In Dera Ismail Khan, in the first place. In 47, my father was transferred to Gujarat, and my mother decided to go and visit her parents in Dera Ismail Khan before she went to Gujarat, because that's being far away from Dera Ismail Khan. So I went there with my mother and two younger brothers, and we stayed there about a month or two, and then one day my mother got a sad news that my Bua had passed away in Lahore, and when she was making decision to go there and visit in Lahore, in the meantime my Dada also passed away. So she left in a hurry, and she left me in Dera Ismail Khan because she was not sure what would happen to me if I went to Gujarat with her, because the language problem would cause an education problem for me. So she decided at the last minute to leave me with her parents, my Nana and Nani, and she went to Lahore to take care of the family business because my grandfather had passed away. After going to Lahore, my father was pretty upset, and he wanted me to go, and my grandparents also, that I should go and live in Lahore rather than in Dera Ismail Khan during the language transition. So my grandparents decided that I should go to Lahore, so they made arrangement and found somebody with whom I was supposed to travel from Dera to Lahore. But on the last day, when my grandfather was taking me out, we went outside the street, and when we were waiting for the other party to come and take me with them, my grandfather, because whatever he had been reading in the papers or finding out what is happening, he changed his mind that he doesn't feel comfortable sending me to Lahore with somebody. So when we came back home, and later on we found out the train by which we were supposed to travel was butchered during this conflict between Hindus and Muslims. So I was lucky that I survived that train over there. Even though I was about 11 years old at that time, but normally in India, or as we know, nobody talks in detail with small children. Whatever information I have is what I've heard people talking, overheard people talking about it, and that's how I came to certain conclusions what was happening around here. Now, when this partition of India talks were going on, many people started feeling uncomfortable, and some of them started talking about leaving Dera and going to Delhi or other Bombay parts of India. Many people from the street beginning to start leaving, even though the streets were comparatively safer, because they felt that, it may not be safer for them to live in this part of India. Now, as we came closer and closer to partition time, there were curfews and some riots in the city, which I don't know much detail, but I remember that our street was all locked up, people were not coming and going, and there were curfews. And people who lived outside this area, one of my aunts, my youngest Masi, they lived in an area which was not very safe. So she, along with her husband and children and extended family, came and lived with us on our street, because this being a safe street. And for many days, people from the street did not go out at all, and they lived on these things which were at home, and mostly ate like a dal and roti. They couldn't get fresh vegetables because nobody was going out. And even in that area, the outhouses, where we call outhouses here, they were all on the roof, and no cleaning was done, so that was done by the members of the family. And what they did was they pick up the pot and just threw it in the back of the street. That's the only way they could clean. But slowly, during this time, the hospital sent a jeep to talk to my Nana, even though he was retired at that time, and they requested if they sent him a jeep every morning and picked him up in the morning and dropped him at home, would he come and serve in the hospital? He gladly agreed, and they did that. And when there was no curfew, then people started moving slowly, and more people from the street leaving that part of India and going to other places where they felt safe.
And was there any violence between Hindus and Muslims at that time that you may have heard about from elders or witnessed yourself?
I did not witness myself, but yes, I did hear. The street which was walled on one side, we lived close to that side of the street, so there they had kind of built up a platform, and from there there were people used to sit on a watch with guns, and I heard there were a couple of times shots fired, but I don't know whether the shots came from outside or whether they went out or whether they came in. That part I don't know the details. But there were some shots fired, and there were also rumors that something happened in the city, but I don't know the details at all.
Okay. And you mentioned that there was a curfew and it was difficult to get out. If you remember, around what time or what month did the curfew was a curfew lifted, or were people able to go out and go to the market and move around a little bit more freely?
I think this was probably 2-3 weeks, and after that, slowly and slowly, life started. They're trying to make it as normal as they can.
2-3 weeks after partition, after August or prior?
After the whole thing started, I don't know whether it started because of partition or before partition. That part I don't know.
Okay, but around July or August, or within those months.
Yes.
Somewhere in those months.
Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned that people were then people started to leave from the area. Were any people coming from villages or rural areas into your areas, or did you see them moving around?
No. A lot of my extended relatives came afterwards. But slowly after that, what happened is, this being people from this street moving out, and so the houses became empty, and many of the people who were living in the street, their extended families who were living in villages, their relatives started coming, and they would use this as a transition area. They'll come here and then stay here for things and then settle down, and then from there they move out to other parts of India. And most of the time these people traveled by train or buses.
And how about the rest of your family? Where were they at this time, including your immediate family and extended family?
My youngest Masi, who lived in Dera permanently, who had come and stayed with us during this partition time, after these things became normal, they left and they went to some part of India. I don't know. They did not first go to Delhi. They go to some other parts, and from there they ended up in Delhi, because some other relatives were staying in Delhi, so they ended up with them. Mm-hmm. And other people also leaving this area, heard a lot of rumors that people from Peshawar and other parts of northwest frontier were moving out and going to Delhi, Bombay and other places. Mm-hmm. And people from villages, even some of my extended families. I remember definitely my Nani's younger sister came from a village, and she lived with her brother's family, and I went to visit them, and they were there for 2-3 weeks, and they also left that area. And some of my Dada's family came, and they lived on our street for a couple of months, and they also left from that area.
And how about any of your extended family that were in Lahore? How did they leave, or did they stay on beyond partition?
In Lahore, my eldest Masi used to live in Lahore. Before partition, she decided to go to Delhi to visit her other sister, because they thought while the things settle down, they can stay there, and if things come back, they'll come back over there. But they never went back. They left Lahore before partition, and they ended up in Delhi and never went there. But my father's side of the family, who was living in Lahore, in a area called Janakpuri, there that was completely Hindu area, and there was a lot of riots there, and all those relatives left. My grandmother was home alone, and one of my uncles who was in the military, he went there in a jeep and took her away, and she left her home without any clothes, without any chunni or shoes. She said she was told to run as fast as she can. So she went in the jeep and she was taken to Model Town, which became a transition area from where people from Pakistan areas was transported to Indian side, and from the Indian side were transported over there. And they ended up in Jalandhar, and they were probably taken in a military convoy from Model Town to India. And from there, how they ended up in Jalandhar, I don't have the slightest idea. But my...
So when you said that your uncle basically took her away in a military jeep, was a mob coming, or was there a Muslim mob that was approaching the neighborhood, or what was the reason for her leaving in such a hurry?
There must be a lot of troubles, because I don't know the details. The only thing I know that my grandparents' house was burnt and destroyed. That's the only thing I know. That's also I've heard from other relatives a few months afterwards, not at that time. Okay, one thing I forgot to say is, even before the partition, the reason I was left behind in Dera Ismail Khan was so I can go to school and continue my education. And I was in middle school at that time, and the day the school was going to be open, we started, all the students from the street got together, and we were about to leave, and the word came around that we cannot go to the school because the school has been burnt, and this school was just for Hindus only. Because normally students did not mix with each other. Every community had their own separate school. So I never did go to any school at all while I stayed there behind. And after things started becoming normal over there...
So just to interrupt, this was right before the partition.
Just before the partition.
And violence that happened before the partition, in the run-up to partition.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Now, after the partition happened, when people started leaving, my aunt, I probably mentioned before, left, and more people started leaving. And after 2-3 weeks, things started getting normal. Everybody started going in the market, and they were able to do shopping, and everything was possible. And my grandfather was going to work every morning and coming back in the evening, and the government jeep was going to take him and bring him back. So things started becoming normal, and even I started going out in town and visiting the relatives who were left behind. Among them was my father's side, my father's Nani and Masi. They lived together about a mile away, and I was safely able to go and visit them. And my mother's side relative also, my Nani's brother, who was his brother's wife lived there, because my brother's wife was a widow, and I was to go and visit them also quite often. And when things began to become normal, my Nana decided that he did not want to leave Dera, because he was in his mid-70s, and he said, I have been in this area all along, so I don't see any reason uprooting my life from here. And they decided that they would live there as long as possible. So after that, everything started to become normal, and we were doing everything possible, except there was no school for me, and there more and more people from the villages were coming and staying in our street, and I'm sure they will be coming in the other parts of Dera also. And they came there and made arrangement, and from here
So can you tell us what month or when you actually made the decision, or when your family members made the decision, the family that you were staying with made the decision to actually end up leaving Dera Ismail Khan?
I think somewhere around March or April of 1948, my more than 90% of the Hindus had already left Dera and surrounding areas. So at that time, my Nana was getting a lot of uh, letters from India from his children that maybe it's time for him to decide and come to part of India. So at that time, I think he decided that we should leave. So when he decided to leave, I think at that time the only way to leave was by train or bus, and he decided to leave by train. And as Dera is situated right on River Indus, and River Indus flow was not normal every time. It changed course quite often. So there was no bridge. That's the reason there was no train coming at that area. So what they used to do when the water flow was less, they used to build a temporary bridge so the buses and transportation can go over it. And when the water flow was high, they used to have boats to go from one side to the other side, which I, as a child, traveled many times. So at that time, around April or May of 48, when we were leaving, there were a lot of people got together and they took a bus from Dera to Darya Khan, from where we had to take a train. And prior to leaving, my Nana had given the house to some Muslim friend with the condition that if we come back, we get the house back. If he doesn't come back, the house was his. So he did the proper paperwork to that extent, and we left by bus to go to Darya Khan. And we traveled to Darya Khan, and when we reached there, the train was loaded so much that there was no room on the thing. Even the people were on the roof. And my grandparents being old and me being young, we couldn't venture and get into train like that. So we stayed on the platform about quite a far away from the train. And when we were waiting there, people who could not get in there with their luggage, they were waiting on the platform, which is a little far away from us. These people were looted, and the police didn't do a darn thing. They kept looking at it, and the other people looted their luggage, and fortunately there was no physical harm to anybody. So we couldn't get on the train, so we came by the same bus we had gone there, came back to Dera.
Did anything happen to the people that were on the actual train, or only people that were standing on the platform?
Right when I was there, before the train left, only thing happened was people who could not get on the train, their luggage was looted. But nothing happened to the train. But I heard afterwards that this train, after it left, it was kind of butchered on the way somewhere, I don't know where. Some people survived by running away when this happened or something like that. But most of the people did not survive. But when we came back to Dera, our house and streets were occupied by Muslims. So we ended up going and staying in the temple. The temple over there was a combination of temple and a gurdwara, which was still walking distance from our home. So that night we stayed there, and all the elders went and made some arrangement, and that the next day a plane, Red Cross plane, came to take us. The people, older and people with young children, were allowed to go on this plane. That's how my Nana, Nani and myself, I was 11 years old, and my Nana and Nani, they were in their mid-70s. So we got on the plane, and even though there was no built-in airport in Dera, but they made a makeshift airport, and Red Cross plane came and loaded us, and we left Dera, and we flew first made a stop in Lahore, where the pilot transported all the proper paperwork, and then from there we flew to Ambala. I remember in Ambala, I must have fallen asleep, that when I woke up, I was at the train station with my Nana, Nani, and all the other passengers with us, and one Mosa and one Mama from Delhi had come to pick us up. So then from there we went to Delhi. And the Delhi, it was a pretty chaotic thing, because one of my Masi, who had about 3-bedroom apartment type of thing she was renting, in that three-bedroom apartment. There were three families. My Masi, who was permanently living there, and two of her sisters ended up over there. And this Masi's daughter lived in an old Delhi. She also had a three-bedroom apartment. There were three other families, two additional families. My mama and my nana, including myself, we ended up over there. So it was a pretty chaotic situation, and most of the times we ended up sleeping on the roof, go on the roof, being a warm weather, so that was not of a problem. So during daytime we would be inside the house, and at night we'd be upstairs on the roof to sleep. So that's how we ended up over there.
Ambala, you came to Delhi. Tell us what happened when you were in Delhi and how long you were there for.
Like I said before, that my three Masis were living in one house in Ramnagar in New Delhi. One of them was the one who was resident of that house, and her daughter's house in Old Delhi called Naya Bazaar. There myself with my Nana, Nani and Mama and his family ended up over there in three families in three rooms. Now what happened after that was my Nana, being a government employee, he was able to get pension and he had some income coming. But rest of the relatives who were old and did not have a very high education, they had a lot of difficult things. All their properties back home and the farms, which some of them owned land in villages, they were all gone, so they did not have any income. I don't know how they managed, myself any idea, because I was in Delhi for about 3 months when my mother came from Gujarat to take me back to Gujarat over there with her, because I was not able to live in Delhi because nobody had their own homes. So for anybody to take care of themselves and me was kind of difficult. So after 3 months in August of 48, I went back to Gujarat. Not back, I went to Gujarat to continue my studies. I had to learn Gujarati over there from scratch. Prior to that, all my education was in Urdu, so it was very difficult, but fortunately I had taught myself Hindi with help of my mother, so at least the alphabet was not that difficult. And having a private tutor, I was able to learn Gujarati, and then having another tutor to learn math and science and other subjects, so I was able to continue in high school, so I did not lose any years of education. But it was not that easy, because learning everything in a new language, at that time the town I was in was Drangra, which was very small. Now it is comparatively big and very cosmopolitan because of the military center. But at that time it was not like that. It was a kind of a very, very backward small town. At that town the population was 20,000 of this town, and there was hardly anybody Hindi speaking people over there. Mostly all Gujaratis of that area, and mostly it was a farm work, except one factory where my father was working. They made soda ash. That's how we were able to manage. We ended up over there.
And did you face any, besides language, did you face any other challenges trying to assimilate into the new culture?
Well, it's always a little difficult. Even though people were nice, I didn't have that much of a difficulty, but you know, I have to kind of wing it many times. I know first day when I went to school, when I was entered into school, they asked me my name, and I told them my name was Narendra Nath, and they, without even asking me, wrote down as a Narendra Nath. But I adopted that name, so there was no problem.
You talked about the adjustments you had in assimilating, including learning a new language. Did your parents face any challenges adjusting in Gujarat?
My father didn't have any problem because he was in his office most of the time, where everybody knew him and everything. When my parents, when they first wanted to, when my mother came around middle of 1947, when they wanted to rent a house, they did have a problem renting a place, because my mother was used to wearing a salwar kameez, but in those days in this town of Drangra nobody wore salwar kameez, so they probably thought, oh, who is this person, you know, and they thought she was a Muslim or something like that, and had a difficulty renting the place to them. So one of the elder from Arya Samaj Mandir, who knew my father, kind of intervened and got us a place started. But once we my parents started living in Rangdara, they got assimilated and there was no problem after that at all. So I finished my high school, and after I finished my high school in 1952, I decided to go and visit my grandparents. I had not visited them during the last 4 years. I have been there. So when I went back, I saw a completely different picture in Delhi. All my relatives had been given houses through the government in Rajendra Nagar and Kingsway Camp. They had lost all their properties back home, so they had some of these things started over there. So whoever had property back home were able to get some kind of a place over here, and they were living in there, even though the atmosphere was different than what they had in Dera, and the incomes were a lot less, but at least they had not crowded conditions like 3 families living in 3 rooms. So conditions were much better, and I met many of my relatives whom I had never met before in these new camps. They were originally from Dera and other places.
Did the elders that had come over ever feel bitter about having to leave, or talk about the fact that they had to give everything up and the adjustments that they had to make?
Yeah, naturally, as people who could not make it, they felt bitter. People who were able to make it, they kind of move forward with their life and consider this happened, so what can they do? But naturally, people who could not make it, the people who were old to start with and did not have very much business or work background, they had a lot of difficulty getting used to it. I know one of my youngest Masi, her husband's main income was from investments and rental properties and farms in the neighborhoods. They had the most difficulty. Even one of the other Masi's husband was much older, and they also had difficulty getting used to new lifestyle. So they had difficulties, yes.
Did you or other family members ever feel the desire to want to go back and visit, or ever think about what life was like in Dera and reminisce about it, or talk about going back?
No, they did talk about it, that how nice they used to have lifestyle over there, and now they are living in a really, really huge city and less income, and all the relatives and everybody is all scattered. Previously, Dera being a small place, you could visit anybody in about half an hour or something like that. Here it's kind of a very different lifestyle. So yes, they did miss their previous lifestyles.
So after your experiences, you feel that there still shouldn't be any issues of Hindus and Muslims being able to live together?
Well, normally when I make friends or anybody like that, I'm not looking for whether he's a Hindu, Muslim or Christians. If we get along, we become friends. I've had at different times a lot of friendship with different people, Muslims, and over the years it peters off for one reason or the other, whether we are in different towns or moved on or different things. I've had this kind of a friendship when I was in college, and also my first job in Seattle, Washington, and even in this Bay Area. People have moved on. Sometimes they have moved to different locations and we lose touch. But other than that, we are not looking for friendship based upon religion alone.
And you don't feel that there should be any difficulty of Hindus and Muslims being able to live together or coexist in the same country, state, or city?
As long as we both respect each other's views, there shouldn't be any problem.
And do you consider yourself Indian? Do you consider yourself Pakistani? Or what do you consider as your nationality?
Nationality would be now, of course, 100% American since I have been here for such a long time. But I never considered myself Pakistani at all, because always, over in Pakistan, never associated with Muslims. Associated with Muslims after coming to India, and it has always been India.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. I think everything has been covered, most of it.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, and this concludes the interview conducted of Narendra Kalra, or Narendranath Kalra, on August 16th, 2011 at 6:05 p.m. in Fremont, California.
Thank you.